From now on, my full-time job is finding a guy who's going to take care of me.
You guys are responsible for me and everything else that comes with me.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the MST channel, where we talk about all things hypergamy. Today's video, we're going to be reading a book about a young girl who just left high school, and she grew up really poor and she's looking a better way out for herself. She starts working for a very wealthy man and his wife. However, the husband starts to make advances at her. Her mom is in financial trouble and she has big dreams of going to college, and this may be her only way out. What will she do? Stay tuned to find out how this all plays out. Part 1. Hi, I'm Sheila, a small town girl from Guntersville, Alabama. I grew up very poor as my mother struggled to make ends meet and my dad walked out on us when I was only 4 years old. Growing up, I promised myself that I would always take myself out of poverty by any means necessary. After I graduated high school, I started searching for a better paying job. I saw a listing online for a maid position. It was the highest paying job on the website. It was only one city over from my city. Fast food was not cutting it, and I had to quit my job at the local McDonald's. I found this job on care.com of a couple looking for a live-in maid. I've never done maid work, but I spruced up my resume a bit to reflect that. Anyway, I applied and was called the next day for an interview. Since it was one city over, I ended up paying $60 for an Uber. That was a lot to risk considering I may not get the job, but I took the risk anyway. I was nicely dressed in a button-down black shirt and black dress pants with flat ballet flats. As I traveled to the interview, I noticed the driver started to drive on a lonely road lined on both sides by a lot of trees. Each house seemed like a mile apart, with tall gates and extremely long driveways. Most of the houses were so big they almost resembled the White House. Finally, the driver pulled up to a gate. I couldn't see the house from the roadside. The driver then rolled his window down and pressed the buzzer and asked me the name. I quickly checked my phone for the interview confirmation and told him Mr. and Mrs. Hodges. He turned back to the buzzer and pressed it again. This time someone responded and said, "Who are you here to see, please?" Then he responded and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Hodges." The lady asked him, "Who is the person visiting?" I told the driver my name, Sheila Jones. "Sheila Jones is the name," he responded. The lady took about 5 seconds, then told him to enter and drive straight ahead until he saw the fountain. The remote-controlled gates then started to open slowly, and the driver proceeded. We drove for about 2 minutes, but still no house in sight. Then he went down a slope and slightly turned, following the paved driveway. And then we saw a large fountain with a statue inside inside the middle of a roundabout. That led to some stairs leading to the house. The driver then parked in front of the stairs and told me, "Have a nice day." I thanked him and exited the vehicle. My mouth was wide open. I have never seen a home this large, ever. As I climbed the stairs, my heart was pounding with nervousness. For one, I had lied that I had experience in this field. And two, rich people can get super suspicious. So, would they know that I lied? Well, no turning back now, I thought. Once I got to the top of the stairs, I rang the bell and waited patiently. While looking around at the grounds of the home, the lawns were well manicured with the most beautiful flowers I've ever seen. Finally, someone came to the door. It was a Caucasian woman in a pink cashmere dress with beautiful red nails and salt and pepper curled hair. "Hi, I'm Mrs. Hodges, and I believe you are Miss Jones, correct?" "Yes, I'm Miss Jones," I responded. "Great," she said, and extended her hand to me and said, "Nice to meet you. Come on in." As I stepped into the gigantic foyer, I was speechless and thought to myself, these people must have a thing for fountains, as there was another gigantic fountain in the foyer, smacked between black railed staircases on both sides. "Right this way," Mrs. Hodges said as she led me down a hallway that led to an office space. As I entered, I saw a gray-haired man sitting in a burgundy leather chair. He stood up as we entered and said, "Welcome, you must be Miss Jones." His wife answered and said, "Yes, this is the young lady that applied yesterday." He extended his arm out and gave me a firm handshake with a bright smile and said, "Welcome." I answered nervously and said, "Thank you," and he pointed to a chair and said, "Please have a seat." My goodness, this office was huge, I said to myself. The wooden desk seemed like one of those from an old Victorian film. The walls were lined with all types of family photos. Mrs. Hodges then joined her husband on the other side of the massive desk and asked if I had brought my resume. "Yes," I said. I reached into my folder and handed it to Mrs. Hodges. "How long have you been working as a maid?" Mr. Hodges asked. "About a year," I responded. Then Mrs. Hodges asked, "But it says here on your resume you just graduated high school just last week. So how did you juggle school with such a demanding job?" "My mother worked as a maid," I began, "and I helped her after school for a couple hours and also on weekends." I lied with a straight face. "That's very nice of you to help your mother," said Mrs. Hodges. Mr. Hodges nodded in agreement. So, we have hired agencies in the past that normally sends over the worst pickings, so we decided to hire privately, said Mrs. Hodges. We are looking for someone trustworthy and dedicated, Mr. Hodges said. I am trustworthy, I responded confidently. Mrs. Hodges then said, You will be working with our senior maid, but she leaves at 5 p.m. daily and returns in the morning at 9 a.m. While she's here, you will assist her, and she's off on weekends. When she's not here, you have to run the operations of the home. Phone calls, pick up dry cleaning, feed the pets, and keep the place tidy. Can you handle that? Yes, I responded with confidence. Mr. and Mrs. Hodges looked at each other, then looked at me. Great, you're hired, said Mr. Hodges. I stood up to shake both their hands and said thank you with excitement. Mrs. Hodges then showed me around the home and took me to where I would be sleeping. Then she said, Be here Monday morning, 7 a.m. sharp. The senior maid will show you the ropes. I nodded in agreement and thanked her. I then called my Uber and headed home. I couldn't believe how easy that was. Oh my God. I was hired. She told me I would be making $1,000 per week. That's a big step up from the $500 bi-weekly I made at McDonald's. This was it. This was my way out. I could save up enough to get myself ready for college. I was beyond excited. On Monday morning, I showed up for work and the senior maid greeted me. Her name was Marcella. She seemed nice and showed me around and pointed me to where everything was and told me to follow her around for that day so I would have an idea where everything was and how everything is done. While assisting Marcella, Mr. Hodges came to the kitchen and greeted us and said, Good morning, ladies. Good morning, Mr. Hodges, we both said, smiling. Mr. Hodges then asked Sheila, May I speak to you in my office? Mr. Hodges then asked Sheila, May I speak to you in my office, please? Sure, I said, and then I followed him across the way to his office. He then asked me to take a seat. So, Mrs. Jones, he began, how long will you be working with us? I responded, I will be going to college in the fall. Okay, so you'll be here about 2 months, he asked. Yes, I responded. Okay, well, I hope you enjoy working here, he said, and if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask me, he said, smiling. I expect you and Marcella to work together as a team. While she's here, I trust you can handle the tasks even when she isn't. Yes, I can, I responded. Okay, good. You may now return to Marcella, he said. 2 weeks went by, and I had settled in nicely. The job wasn't that hard, as they had every cleaning gadget you could think of. The pay was great, so I wasn't complaining, and I had no bills except my phone bill. One night, after Mrs. Hodges finished watching her favorite TV show, she turned in early for bed. Mr. Hodges always enjoyed staying up watching reruns of The Price is Right. On this particular night, I got done doing the dishes and was about to head down to the basement to my quarters when Mr. Hodges asked me to help him light his cigar. I found it was kind of weird because he had never asked me to help him with that before. Anyway, I didn't hesitate. I sat beside him and helped him after. I sat beside him and helped him. After lighting his cigar, he asked me, "When does school start?" I didn't think anything of it because I had told them that I would be going to school in the fall. I responded, "I'm just working to save up enough money before school starts in the fall." I told him the exact date when school started, and then he asked me if I had everything that I needed. As I was answering him, I noticed his eyes were staring at my breasts. Anyway, he proceeded to ask me if I have everything I needed to start my first semester. I answered and told him no, I didn't have everything yet and I'm still saving up to buy everything. He then placed his hand on my thigh and said, "Don't worry, you will be well taken care of because you do such a good job around here. I will make sure that you have everything you ever need." I was a bit surprised and asking myself, why is he being so nice? And it sounded too good to be true because no one has ever given me anything, ever. His hand was still on my thigh and I started to get a bit uncomfortable, so I politely moved his hand away. He asked me what was the total for everything that I needed, including an apartment near the school and all my expenses. I was a bit confused because, for one, I have never planned on getting an apartment. I had planned to drive to school every day. And why was he going to take care of everything was the other question. I then told him I don't have a complete amount because I had planned on driving up there every day. I then asked him, "Why are you being so nice to me?" He said, "I told you that I love the job that you are doing around here and I want to see you successful." He then took a puff of his cigar and said, "Go and calculate the amount that you're going to need for everything and I will pay for it. But I want you to do something for me." "Something for you?" I asked, confused. "What is that?" He responded, "I want you to make me a very happy man." I wasn't sure what he meant, so I asked him, "In what way, Mr. Hodges?" He then responded, "I would like for you to be my girlfriend, but that would have to remain between you and I, as you know I am married." "Huh?" I questioned. "I have been watching you," he responded, "for some time now. Over the course of you working here, I can tell you are a nice young lady, and I would like for us to be more than just employer and employee." "I don't think I can do that, Mr. Hodges," I responded and stuttered simultaneously. He looked at me and said, "I haven't had relations with Mrs. Hodges in a very long time, and she doesn't seem interested in those things anymore. And I have feelings, you know. You don't have to give me an answer tonight, but just know the offer is on the table. I can make you a very happy woman and you won't have to work ever again." I was in shock. I literally could not speak. I told Mr. Hodges that I'm starting to feel tired and would have to turn in for the night. I went down to the basement to my room and I was up thinking about the offer. I didn't like the idea that he was married, but I really needed the money. And maid work isn't the easiest job in the world. Plus, my money would slow down once I stopped working because I couldn't keep my position as the living maid and attend college. It was a lot to think about. So I went to bed, or at least I tried to. I couldn't sleep. Mr. Hodges' offer kept playing in my mind all night. And that was the end of part 1. I will be back with part 2 in a few. So comment down below what you think so far, if you're enjoying the story. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.